Okay, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, you're welcome to today's Srimad Bhagavatam Systematic Study, Bhakti Vaibhava, Unit 12. Our speaker is Grace Srivas Vanacari, Prabhu, who is going to be taking us on this unit. We'll continue from where we stopped in the last weekend, from chapters 21. So, is Grace Srivas Vanacari, Prabhu, please? It's over to you now. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Om Jnana Timirasya Jnanan Janasalakaya Chakshuramalitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yukta Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunastam Bitam Tam Sanjivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Bitam Sya Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Iti Namini Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Ashri Tatmane Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tetariti Namini Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvisai Sasuyavadi Pasacha Desatarini Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripasindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Narayana Namaskritya Narachava Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Chayamudirayat Nashtapraya Swabhadresu Nityam Bhagavatam Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So everyone is welcome to today's session. We are continuing with Canto 3, Chapter 21 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Conversation Between Manu and Kadarma Muni. We ended on text 10 the last time, and so we are continuing from text 11. Text 11 says, Vinyasta charanam bhujam amsa deshe Garud Mataha Drishtva ke Vastil Tam Vaksha Sriyam Kustaba Kandaram. Translation: a golden streak on his chest, the famous Kustaba gem suspended from his neck. He stood in the air with his lotus feet placed on the shoulders of Garuda. So the slide says, perfection of yoga means to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The perfection of yoga, therefore, does not terminate in voidness or impersonalism. On the contrary, the perfection of yoga is attained when one actually sees the personality of Godhead in his eternal form. The process of Krishna consciousness is to deliver the form of Krishna directly. I think there is another slide from text 11. Yeah, text 11, another slide. It says, description of the form of the Lord. Kadarma Muni saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is free from material contamination, in his eternal form, effulgent like the sun, wearing a garland of white lotuses and water lilies. The Lord was clad in spotless yellow silk, and his lotus face was fringed with sleek dark locks of curly hair. Adorned with a crown and earrings, he held his characteristic conch, disc, and mace in 3 of his hands, and a white lily in the 4th. He glanced about in a happy, smiling mood, whose sight captivates the hearts of all devotees. A golden streak on his chest, the famous Kostaba gem suspended from his neck. He stood in the air with his lotus feet placed on the shoulders of Garuda. There's one more slide. The form of Krishna. The form of Krishna is described in the authoritative Vedic literatures, Brahma Samhita. His abode is made of Chintamani stone. The Lord placed there as a cowherd boy and is served by many thousands of gopis. These descriptions are authoritative, and a Krishna-conscious person takes them directly, acts on them, preaches them, and practices devotional service as enjoined in the authoritative scriptures. So, the professional yoga means to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here, Kadarma Muni has achieved the profession of yoga. Here, the Lord is right in front of him, standing on the shoulders of Garuda, fully decorated as the verse describes. He has a golden streak on his chest, a famous Kostaba gem suspended from his neck. He's wearing a yellowish silken dhoti, and then he's wearing these wonderful garlands of white lilies. And he is standing in mid-air on the shoulders of Garuda. So we cannot imagine the great fortune of Kadarma Muni. Now, because of his devotional service, because of his devotional practices, he is able to attract the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the Lord has descended from the spiritual sky to present himself to the vision of Kadarma Muni. Kadarma Muni must have been a very fortunate soul for the Lord to descend right in front of him and present himself in such a wonderful way, just to satisfy the vision of Kadarma Muni. As it is said here, the perfection of yoga is to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If someone is performing yoga and the goal is different from having the darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, such yoga is condemned. Such yoga is useless. The yogi is meditating on the form of the Lord. The yogi wants to have a vision of the form of the Lord. And once the yogi is able to envisage the form of the Lord, he considers his efforts fruitful. He considers his attempt successful. So Kandharma Muni, his yoga practice is bearing fruits. And therefore the Lord has come right in front of him in his hermitage, in the forest, where this sage is sitting alone in his hermitage. The Lord appeared before him. So the purpose of yoga is to see the Lord. So Kandharma Muni saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was freed from all material contamination. And a description is given. The Lord was clad in spotless yellow silk. His lotus face was fringed with sleek, dark-colored locks of curly hair, adorned with a crown, earrings. And he held his characteristic conch, disc, mace, and three of his hands, and white lily in the fourth. He glanced about in a happy, smiling mood. That is the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always in a jolly mood. His countenance is always in a smiling mood. His appearance is very attractive. His appearance is very, very inspiring for the devotee. So Kandharma Muni is very fortunate that the Lord has appeared to present his form before him. And so he must be such a fortunate soul, because it's not all yogis who get a chance to see this wonderful form. Yogis are laboring very hard, performing all kinds of tapasya, just to have a glimpse of the super soul in the heart. But here, the Lord himself, because he's not different from the super soul, but here he is fully manifest as the Lord of Vaikuntha, riding on the shoulders of Garuda. So Kandharma Muni is such a wonderful devotee. He has pleased the Lord so much, he has satisfied the Lord so much, that the Lord is presenting himself before him. Kim alabhyam bhagavati prashane Sri Krishna nirketane. What is impossible for one who has satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Anyone who is able to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is nothing impossible for him to achieve in this world. Bhagavati Samprashane. Anyone who is able to satisfy the Supreme Lord, Bhagavati Samprashane. Samprashana means to satisfy. Anyone who is able to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is in a transcendental position. He transcends the material world. So right now, Kandharma Muni is in a transcendental position. Just by having darshan of the Supreme Lord, just by having the wonderful association of the Lord and his pure devotee Garuda, his life had become perfect. So Kandharma Muni has achieved the goal of his life by seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prema Jana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadaiva Hirdaya Suvilokayanti Yam Samashundra Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Shamasundara is Krishna himself, who has inconceivable attributes. And the devotees, from their point of perfection, they can perceive the Lord within the core of their hearts. So in the case of Kadarma Muni, he's not only seeing the Lord within the core of his heart, but the Lord has now manifested right in front of him. It's the same thing like the case of Dhruva Maharaj. He was concentrating on the Lord of the heart. But when he opened his eyes, he saw the Lord right in front of him. So this is the great fortune of such devotees, because they have given up everything for the Lord's pleasure. The Lord decided to reward them by manifesting himself before the devotees. Text 12 says, Jata harsho patam murudna shitao labda manorataha gribistu abhya grinat priti swabhavatma kritanjalihi. Translation: when Kadarma Muni actually realized the Supreme Personality of Godhead in person, he was greatly satisfied because his transcendental desire was fulfilled. He fell on the ground with his head bowed to offer obeisances unto the lotus feet of the Lord. His heart naturally full of love of God, with folded hands, he satisfied the Lord with prayers. So Kadarma Muni has seen the Lord, and what was his natural reaction? He fell on the ground with his head bowed to offer obeisances unto the lotus feet of the Lord. And his heart, full of love of Godhead, he began to offer prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the slide says, ultimate goal of spiritual realization. In full spiritual realization, there is a perception of spiritual happiness. And that happiness is described in Bhagavad Gita as the supreme happiness, which is beyond the material senses. Trance is described to be of two kinds, sampragyata and asampragyata, or mental speculation and self-realization. In samadhi or asampragyata, one can realize by his spiritual senses the spiritual form of the Lord. That is the ultimate goal of spiritual realization. There are, I think, two other slides in the same verse. Real devotees accept only necessities of life. Real devotees of Bhakti Yoga accept only the material necessities of life absolutely needed to maintain the body and soul together. They refrain completely from all exaggerated material sense gratification. They are prepared to undergo all kinds of tribulations, provided they can make progress in the realization of the personality of Godhead. Okay, so the ultimate goal of spiritual realization is to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there are two aspects of it. The Mayavad approach, or the mental speculators approach, which is called sampragyata, And then the asampragyata is the real self-realization, God realization experienced by the devotees. And certainly, asampragyata is superior to sampragyata. Sampragyata is just to situate one in the Brahman Jyoti, Brahman realization. And in the Brahman realization, the form of the Lord is missing. And therefore, the intense bliss that comes off the Lord's body, the intense bliss that is exuding from Krishna, from the Lord himself, is not experienced by the mental speculators, Mayavadis, who practice sampragyata. But for the devotee, because the devotee is able to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he actually experiences unlimited bliss in his meditation, in his trance, and that is called asampragyata. By this method, the devotee's spiritual senses are awakened. We have material senses and we have spiritual senses. In the material world, we depend on our material senses. But these material senses cannot perceive spiritual things because they are only limited to material experience. But when our spiritual senses are awakened by the process of bhakti, by the process of sadhana bhakti, then one can actually relish the bliss of spirituality, the bliss coming from the Lord. So that is the ultimate goal, to awaken our spiritual senses so that we can perceive that's joy, that Krishna consciousness, that spiritual bliss, ananda, that we are actually hankering for. So the ultimate goal of spiritual realization is to perceive that transcendental bliss, which is exuding, emanating, coming from the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna's form is a form of bliss. Krishnera Swarupena Chit Ananda. Krishna's form is a form of bliss. And so when a devotee is able to see that form, he is in total happiness, just as Kandarma Muni is experiencing right now. So in order to come to this platform of asampragyata, one has to minimize the bodily needs. So in this slide, it says, devotees who practice bhakti yoga, they accept only material necessities which are absolutely necessary for the maintenance of the body. In other words, a devotee does not try to enjoy the material world. The non-devotees, their goal is to exploit material nature. Their goal is to be the greatest enjoyer of the senses. That is actually the goal of materialism. The goal of material life is to maximize sense enjoyment. So they are ready to go to any length. They are ready to do anything that would bring them the greatest sense pleasure. But a devotee understands that these material senses are preventing me, they're blocking me from seeing the wonderful form of Krishna. These material senses are cheating me. They're not allowing me to perceive spiritual things. So therefore, we don't give them so much room. We don't give them so much pleasure. We don't exercise them so much. We try to control them. And this begins with eating. Eating helps us to control the senses. As Rupa Goswami has mentioned in his Upadeshamrita, that spiritual life begins with controlling the tongue. Because if one's tongue is not controlled, one cannot control his belly. And if one cannot control his belly, one cannot control his genitals. And the person who cannot control his genitals to achieve success in spiritual life is almost impossible. Because the goal of the genitals is to keep us attached to material pleasure. And we all know the highest material pleasure is sex. So the genitals play a very important role in keeping the living entity in this material world. So in order to control the genitals, one has to control the stomach. And in order to control the stomach, one must control the tongue. And in order to control the tongue, one must check what he eats and how much he eats. So here it is mentioned that the devotee accept only those material necessities which are absolutely necessary for maintaining the body and soul together. They refrain completely from all exaggerated material sense gratification. They are prepared to undergo all kinds of tribulations, provided they can make progress in the realization of the personality of Godhead. So that is why devotees accept difficulties, they accept austerities, they accept challenges just to help them control the senses. Sense gratification and spiritual progress, they go ill together. Either we have to progress on the path of sense gratification, or we have to progress on the path of self-realization. So a devotee naturally minimizes the sense gratification in order to progress on the spiritual path. So if there are any comments or questions, they are welcome. If there are no comments or questions, we'll proceed with our exercise. So are there any comments or questions from any quarters? Otherwise, we start with our exercise.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I guess there is no question.
Okay, so we go on. Actually, here we have group discussion, but we are not in a classroom setting. We're not in a classroom setting. Normally in a classroom setting, we group the students into groups and we give them different assignments. So in this case, I made it individual. You say here, it says group discussion, forming 3 groups, study and identify points relevant for personal application, mood and mission, and preaching application from the verses. Make a presentation to the class. So I have broken these sections into individual sections so that each one will make its own personal presentation. Though on the Zoom, you can put people in groups. You can put them in different rooms, and they can discuss. I don't know how to do that, but
okay. I was just going to allow you to finish before responding to what you said, because it's not a impossible task. We have the facility. So if I am informed, all we need to do is just create a room for the students, and everyone, as the host, I should be able to do that. Create the room for the student based on
the groups, the various groups. Yeah, in the GBC
so maybe
meeting,
in the subsequent thing. Yes, we can do that.
In the GBC meeting, they do that. When a subject is to be discussed, they'll group the members into groups and put them in different rooms. Exactly. And then you discuss. Then they'll bring everybody back together. Yes. Then you now, so I've seen that, but I just felt
it's possible. We have the facility, so we can do it.
Okay. But anyway, for today's exercise, I've made it individual so that we can also learn individually how to make a presentation. Maybe in the future, when we have other exercises, we can do it in groups. But the students have to be many. If the students are not many, also forming groups becomes difficult.
Yes, because like for today now, we're just 5 students here with you.
Yeah. So it's better.
So Kamalasha came in and went back.
Okay.
Yadunat, I'm not surprised because it's not consistent. So Jyoti Sharu said he's traveling, but he would try. I think he also was confused about what we wanted to do. Hopefully we'll hear tomorrow.
Yeah, he sent me a message, and I said he can present his own tomorrow, because I'm sure we cannot finish everyone today. So anyway, this is the exercise. Is we can say individual exercise. So each student has been given his verses, assigned his verses, and the goal of the exercise is either a personal application, moon and mission, or preaching application. So according to the verses you are given, you do justice. So we are going to begin with Grace Sanika Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I always actually want to be the last when it comes to presentation so that I can learn from other students, but I don't know.
Well, others want to learn from you too.
Like Kama always put me in that situation also. Even outside of devotional settings, the people they will just bring me into the
because you are great.
And you
I'm trying to learn.
You emit some aura.
Yes.
So they see your aura and they think you should start.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think my time will start now. Maybe probably I'll have my timing here. When the other students are timing, I'll put the timing on the Zoom so that they can be seen. But for me, I have my timing here.
Okay. In fact, I would say, do we need more time based on what you have had? Do we need more than 5 minutes? Let us know so that we can adjust.
Yeah, actually, I suggested before that to do a proper presentation, 10 minutes would have been ideal, but 5 minutes also is okay. Only that we'll just have to summarize, compress whatever we want to say, but 10 minutes would have been an ideal one. And since we also not too many.
Okay. All right. So I will say 10 minutes. Since we're only 5. Yeah, 10 minutes should be okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now I will start. I will not do the traditional reading so that I will save the time.
Yes, just a point. And then
I'll just read the text of the particular verses that I have to treat, and I'll go from there.
All right.
Okay, so Omaganam Timiranda Sia Ganam Gyanam Shalakaya Chaksho Militam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama Mokam Karuti Vachanam Pangam Lagayate Girim Yatkripata Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Vanchakarpataru Ubyascha Kripasundubyas Evascha Patitanam Pavajnebyo Vaishnavebyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. So I offer my respectful obeisances to everyone, to the devotees, to the Lord, and to the spiritual masters, so that I can be able to render service for my purification and the pleasure of the devotees and the Lord. So we're discussing the application of verses 13, 14, and 15 of the chapter 21 of third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. which basically actually is talking about conversation between Manu and Kadamamuni. So the verses we're reading, I'll give an intro for some few seconds so that I can lead us into the discussion. The verses 13, 14, and 15 actually answers the basic fundamental questions that every Sadaka must ask him or herself in the pursuit of the purpose or goal of Bhakti. It answers the three questions of what is the goal, who can attain the goal, and how you can attain the goal. So that is what the three verses actually emphasizes on. So I'll go straight into the verse and I will express at the end how these three verses answers the question of what is the goal of Bhakti or a spiritual practitioner, and who actually attains the goal of Bhakti, and then how does one attain the goal of Bhakti. So the first verse, Kadamamuni is actually offering a prayer showing us what is the goal of Bhakti. In the verse, it says, the great sage Kadamamuni said, O Supreme Worshipable Lord, my power of sight is now fulfilled, having attained the greatest perfection of the sight of you, who are the reservoir of all existence. Through many successful beds of deep meditation, advanced yogis aspire to see your transcendental form. So here, Kadamamuni is giving us an introduction into what is the goal of a sadhaka. The ultimate goal of Bhakti, or the process of spiritual life, is to attain the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Like as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Mam Abhidyananti Yavanya Shasmita Tota, Gyatan Vishate Tadanantaram, that ultimately to see him, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the ultimate goal, and the means of attaining that is Bhakti. So Kadamamuni in the 13th, in this particular verse, is bringing us to understand that the lotus, the personal features of the Lord is the ultimate goal. And Prabhupada emphasized that in the purport where he says that Kadamamuni was saying that the Lord is the reservoir of all that can be understood by the nomenclature of goodness and by our experiencing you face to face. So he emphasizes that importance of having a face-to-face meeting with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And towards the end of their purport of that text, number 13, Prabhupada encapsulates that purpose of that verse by saying that the exalted perfection of seeing the Lord is not exaggerated by Kadamamuni. It gives evidence that those who are actually elevated in yoga aspire in life after life to this form. So emphasizing that the ultimate goal of spiritual life is to actually have the darshan of the Supreme Personality of God, as himself, Kadamamuni, is in here. So he's bringing us to understanding that the goal, what is the goal? The goal is Bhakti. And there are different types of living entities, but they are categorized into two. And the very scriptures tell us that Nityu Nityanam, Chetanas Chetananam, that there are two types of living entity. And the living entity natural inclination is that he wants to enjoy because it is part of the Supreme Enjoyable Personality, God. But then he doesn't know how to enjoy. So here, the zenith of enjoyment or experiencing bliss or happiness is described in the means of, in the process of attaining the Supreme Personality, the features of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that takes us into the next one, having established that the goal or the purpose is Bhakti. And then in the second verse, Kadamamuni said, your lotus feet are the true vessel to take one across the ocean of mundane science. Only persons deprived of their intelligence by the spell of the deluded energy will worship those feet with a view to attain the trivial and momentary pleasure of the senses, which even persons rotting in hell can attain. However, oh my Lord, you are so kind that you bestow mercy even upon them. So here, like I said in the beginning, the three verses explains what is the goal, and we have heard about what the goal is. And here in this verse is telling us who attains the goal. And then Kadamamuni is explaining here that in the path of Bhakti, naturally people are inclined, because of the conditional modes of material nature, attracted to always wanting to ask for temporary pleasurable desire. So therefore, when they come to the path of spirituality, the tendency is that they desire for something that is temporary. And in the Prabhupada uses a very, Prabhupada brings us a significant point, and they describe them as Atta Medasa. The Atta Medasa are persons who have actually deluded, who have lost their intelligence. The only such a person would ask for something that is temporary. So it's distinguishing here that those who have this kind of mindset or consciousness actually will not attain the goal which has been established. The moment one desires, and that point is perfectly, Prabhupada quoted Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada is very expert in paraphrasing Bhagavad Gita. There are twice Prabhupada references Bhagavad Gita, and Prabhupada actually is referencing Bhagavad Gita chapter 7, text number 20, where he said that those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. Actually, 20 to 22 of chapter 7 describe these Atta Medasa kind of persons. They will never attain the Supreme Lord. And when in chapter 9, towards the end of the Prabhupada goes to chapter 9 also. If we go to chapter 9, verse 20 to 22 also explains that those who study the Vedas and drink the same juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship the indirectly purified of sinful reactions. But after ultimately, the three verses emphasizes that ultimately bringing the consciousness back, that the goal is Bhakti. So the first point, the verse is telling us that the goal is Bhakti. The second point is telling us those who are Atta Medasa will never attain. So one has to understand that the only person that can attain is one who actually goal is geared towards attaining Bhakti. And then that takes us to the third verse, which is verse number 15. And the verse number 15 actually encapsulates or gives how does one, the process of application, which is actually what I'm supposed to be speaking on. I'll put this at the end because, like I said, it's 3 points. What is the goal? Who can attain the goal? And the personal application, which is how do we attain the goal, is what is given here. And in summary, because of time, in the second canto, chapter 2, text number 10, Prabhupada paraphrased that verse also in this in the purport that what Akama Sarva Kama Uva Mukcha Kama Udara the Tifrina Bhakti Yojina Yajeta Purusham Param. What is that? It is saying that a person, Sukadev Goswami was speaking, that a person who has a broader intelligence, whether he full of all material desires without any past material desire, or is desiring liberation, almost all be worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is how to become a successful sadhaka to attain the goal. So in application, the living entity by nature is Anandamaya Bhyasat. It desires pleasure, but its pleasure should be directed towards worshiping the Lord. And that is what Sukadev Goswami said in this verse. Second Canto, chapter 3, verse number 10, that ultimately the living entity, how to attain this goal, which is the application, is to whatever one desires, whether one desires everything, whether one does not desire anything, the position of a pure devotee, one should worship the Supreme Personality of God. And another was bringing us to the first verse, that the ultimate goal is Bhakti, and those who are naturally not going to be able to attain the ultimate goal are those who are Atta Medasa. But then, even when one have a desire materially, one should direct that desire towards, which is what Kadamamuni did in the third verse, where he said that, oh, the Lord, this is the goal, but he is saying that, my dear Lord, I desire under your direction, all conditions so, as if bounded by rope, I constantly engage in satisfying their desire, following them, O embodiment of religion. I also bear obligation for you who are eternal. So Kadamamuni now is actually directing us how to apply in our desire to enjoy in Krishna consciousness by approaching the Supreme Personality of God. That is the application. And this is the answer to the how does one actually achieve the process of Bhakti. I will stop here because my time, from what I'm seeing, is exactly 10 minutes now. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. So we will take comments from the other students. in terms of the presentation, in terms of the goal of the exercise, we can make some assessment, and everyone should be eager to say something, because that's a learning process. Every student must learn to give feedback, because when we do presentations, each person has to give a feedback. So in giving feedback, we always say something positive. If you have a point of correction, a point of improvement, you don't just go to it directly. You say, first you give good points. The areas is covered nicely. The presentation style is nicely done. Then you say, you end up by saying, but in this area, you need to improve like this, you need to do like this, you need to do like this. Then again, you end up with a positive point. So you begin with a positive point, you bring in a point of attention, point of correction, and you end with a positive point. That is how we give feedback to our fellow students when it comes to presentation skills. So everyone should be ready. And that's why you should listen carefully while the presentation is going on, so that you can pick one positive point or two positive points. And you can also mention one point with you think you could improve. And then again, you close your assessment with another positive point. So plus, minus, plus. That is the assessment feedback procedure. So anybody has something to say with Salika's Prabhu's presentation?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So Prabhu's Salika, we first of all thank him for being a front runner. At least he has paved the way, and it's a very good beginning for the rest of us to follow. And I appreciate the way he sectionalized the topic, stating that the first was the goal of Bhakti, then secondly, who attains the goal. Then to conclude, how do we attain the goal? And he regards that his own personal application. Then he also cited made some other quotations from scriptures like Bhagavad to back up his point. And his presentation is actually very educative. But the area of that personal application, that's the area why I think maybe you need to come down a little bit, how his own personal realization about this particular text. But above that, I think he has done very well, and he managed his time very well. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Any other person who wants to offer a feedback?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. I would say that I'm totally mesmerized by Bhakti Salika's presentation. How he was able to unearth most important points in the 3 verses as what is the goal, who attains the goal, and how the goal can be attained. And in fact, I appreciate him a lot for that. And like this in the Madhavan Prabhu is saying, I was expecting his personal realization of what he has said in his personal life so that he can learn from it. So I hope that is the only thing there. And as the presentation with the references made by Prabhupada from the various scriptures, in fact, I see him very, very erudite. So this is what my observation so far.
All right. Next person. I think Tamal Krishna Prabhu. Or someone else is there.
Yeah, Tamal Krishna Prabhu, Jyoti Sharu Prabhu, Chitra Prabhu.
Jyoti Sharu is here.
Jyoti Sharu is here. It's just that it's muted.
Maybe he said he cannot use the camera. He can speak with
he can only
voice.
listen. Yeah, because he was traveling.
And then what about Chitra? Chitra is here.
Chitra also is here. Chitra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. So
Please
I want to
accept
hear
my
your voice.
yeah.
All glories to Gurudev Goswami Prabhupada.
God is Krishna Prabhupada. Yeah, Maharaj, concerning Salika Prabhu's presentation, it is well said, it is nicely, and as my senior students have said it, yes. The only problem I have is not with him particular his presentations, the time. I believe things were so quick, so it was running. So we hope that next time, as in the future, we'll get enough time, like 10 minutes or more, if possible, so that he can take his time and say it so that we can get more of clarification. So that is it. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Any other person who wants to speak up, say something? Jyoti Swarup, is
not able to, yes, he's typed a message. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, yes, I'm around, but here there is a lot of noise also.
Okay.
So I just came aside. I'm listening. I'm here, Maharaj.
All right. So maybe you're in a moving vehicle or something, or in a train or something. So people were wondering, what are you talking about? So better you don't talk. You just listen.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, so then let's move on to the next person. I think Tamal.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandava Pranam, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, mine start from 42.
No. You're not presenting on what Prabhu has just finished. What are your comments about what he has done?
Okay, I think what I would say is okay for me now. I think it went well. So let's move on and see what the outcome next. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Well, I think maybe this is it your first time for all of you to do this kind of presentation?
No, it is
No, Maharaj.
the last time we had a longer time than this.
Okay.
That's the only difference, but we have had this before.
Okay.
Only we have more time than this.
This is the third time.
In the third time.
Yes.
Okay, it's
Yes.
necessary. It's part of the Bhakti Vaibhava syllabus that students must learn how to present, because you cannot graduate as a Bhakti Vaibhava without doing presentations. In the first module, you do a presentation. Actually, you do a lecture and a presentation. Individual lecture, individual presentation. And then in the second module, again, you do an individual lecture and a presentation. In fact, when we talk about presentation, is more of a PowerPoint presentation. But this exercise opens you up for both the lecture and the presentation. So we have to be attentive when other students are speaking. If you're not attentive, then you cannot contribute much. So when a student is making his presentation, you have to listen and take into consideration points that are relevant, take into consideration areas you think he should improve, because it also helps you when it comes to your turn to also do the presentation. So in this exercise, we are not applying all the rules of presentations. If you read the handbook, the student handbook, there are a number of rules, a number of objectives that one is to achieve by the presentation. But this is just an exercise to make us think, to make us study, to make us practice how to make presentations. So in the first place, each and everyone should read the verse ahead of time, read the purport ahead of time, pick points that he can present in the light of the academic goal. Say, for instance, in the case of Salika Prabhu, his goal is personal application. So he has picked the points. What is the goal of Bhakti Yoga? Who attains this goal, and how to attain this goal. He had 3 verses, and from each of the verses, he picks these points. Very wonderful. Then, in the discussion, because they are personal application, I think Madhavan Prabhu mentioned that, and then Rasavan also mentioned that. Because they are personal application, it is expected that you will bring it down to yourself, because it is a personal application. So how are you applying these points you have picked? The goal of Bhakti Yoga. What is the goal of Bhakti Yoga? So that question is to you. Who attains the goal of Bhakti Yoga? That question is to you. And how do you attain Bhakti Yoga? That question is to you, because it is personal application. So you have to say that Kadharma Muni has identified the goal of Bhakti Yoga as having darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, having seeing the Lord. So in that sense, your as a personal application, it means you must also work in the spirit of Kadarmamuni. You have to follow his example. You have to walk on his path so that you can also realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Kadarmamuni has realized. Because whatever path Kadarmamuni has passed or followed to achieve this goal, you are going to apply the same path, hopefully to achieve the same goal. So you have to personalize it. That is the whole thing. You have to personalize the message. You have to personalize these points that Kadarmamuni has realized the Supreme Lord as the goal of Bhakti Yoga. So you also follow the same example, follow the same path, so that you can also realize Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the who attains it, who qualifies. So you must also act in a way so that you can qualify to be able to achieve the goal. And then how does it achieve that goal? The process by which you achieve that goal, you will say that I am going to follow that process that Kadarmamuni followed. I'm going to apply that process Kadarmamuni applied, so that at the end of it, I can also achieve the goal. So you personalize it. So we want to say that he made a very good attempt. He got many points. He identified the points. He discussed at length, quoting from different scriptures to support his presentation. But he did not personalize the goals. He did not personalize the method of achieving these goals. He did not personalize the qualification for achieving these goals. So he has to personalize it. Otherwise, it was a wonderful presentation that analyzed the Kadarmamuni's prayers to the Lord. He analyzed them very nicely, but he needs to personalize them, to bring it into his own life, to tell us how he's going to apply these things in his own life, because the goal is personal application. So, but since he's the first, we are now learning from his presentation. We are learning from his presentation. So we should not repeat the same mistake, or we should not lack what he lacked, because he's the first person, and so he did his best. So I think that is what I will say, that the presentation is wonderful. He brought in so many verses from different places. He explained, he picked out the points. Picking out the points are very important. Pick out the main points of the verse and the purport, and then he presented them very nicely. However, he could have made it a better presentation if he had personalized these points. Otherwise, it's a wonderful presentation. So thank you very much, Sanika Prabhu.
Thank you so much, Srivas and Vanacari. Thank you, all of these fellow students, for your observations. And like His Grace has said, it's a learning process, so we'll keep learning. Sometimes also, I think the constraint was the timing. I was in the way I stepped it down. By the time I was getting to finally finishing the point, I had no time left to go further. But I really appreciate, and it actually gives me opportunity, a learning opportunity to be able to be more prepared in the future.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare
So,
Krishna.
so I think we'll go to the next person. So Rasavan Prabhu.
So Rasavan Prabhu, I'll be putting you on timing. You have 10 minutes. If you're ready, let me know, and I'll start your time now.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Sarika Prabhu has said the introduction prayers for us already, so there's no need repeating it. So I take Cheta, the editor office of the Guru Paramparam. Nama Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I'm doing my presentation based on text 16, 17, and 18. And then the objectives of these three texts, as I've seen, is one, the 16 highlights on the Isavasya principle, that everything within the universe belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he has assigned or allotted to each and every living entity his portion. And then the second, the 17 talks about the stereotype type of life that we live in our material existence: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and then engaging ourselves in the family and other social gatherings. And then the text 18 also highlights on the wheel of time, which alone consumes everything or winds up everything in this material universe. So as devotees, how do we live our lives in the eyes of these points? So also, since we are all bound by the rope of material desires, I understood from Kadamamuni the way he paid obeisances to the Lord constantly, to be able to come out of the material time, material existence. So by the Isavasya principle, one is supposed to live by his own quota, allotted to him by the Supreme Lord, thereby not encroaching on others' properties. In effect, everything in the universe belongs to the Supreme Lord and has given every living entity what he needed, both for his material and spiritual enjoyment. With this in mind, all others' property are like a garbage to me, being only content with what the Lord has allotted to me. I abide by the direction given by the Lord in the Vedas, understanding that the Lord, in his supreme mercy, has given us the opportunity to be happy in this material world, but by following the injunctions and directions he has given in the Vedas, which, so doing, gradually lead us to the path of liberation. So I understand that the Lord is the initiator of religion, and he is the leader of all religion. Therefore, Kadamamuni addressed the Lord as Sukla, the leader of religion. And from that point, I understood that to live a peaceful life in this material world, I need to abide by the religious principles that the Lord has set for every pious being. By this process of surrender to the Supreme Lord, definitely my human life's goal is achieved. Reason for why I embrace Krishna consciousness for elevation to higher status of spiritual life. Okay, in text 17, being fed up of the stereotyped life of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and then engaging myself in a family gathering and social gathering and so forth, I took shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna through my dear Guru Dev and assembly of devotees. And in their midst, always drinking the intoxicating nectar of the qualities and of the Supreme Lord, through always hearing Krishna Katha, discussing with devotees, I see that my disease for material hankerings are kept to the minimum. And by my practice of Krishna consciousness in the midst of devotees, I could testify that my fear of death has also completely vanished. Taking shelter of the holy name of Krishna and rendering loving, dedicated service to the devotees of the Lord, I no more have any fear for my destination, once I can always hear the glories of the Lord and chant constantly his holy name. So in this way, I can say that I'm on the process of solving my life's goal of no birth and death. And as in the material world, everything is wounded up by the time. I understood that dwelling on my material existence, this body, which is bound to be wounded up by time, I'm a great loser. And because my real identity is a spirit soul, which is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and that aspect, being eternal as the Lord, I need to totally surrender myself to the Lord through the various processes the Lord has given in the Vedas, so that I may now live the life of the soul, which is devotional service. As the Salika Prabhu mentioned, the goal is Bhakti Yoga, devotional service. So by this process of Bhakti Yoga, always engaging myself in the process of Bhakti Yoga, Srila Prabhupada says that the devotee has overcome death, and the time factor has no influence on the devotee. The time factor has no influence on the devotee only by our constant application of ourselves in Krishna consciousness. As we live in the midst of devotees, we hear Krishna Katha, and then we serve the devotees and the Supreme Lord. In that wise, we could understand that even when we leave this body, I can enter into the spiritual sky where there's no more returning back. As Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita, Jamba Kama Chame Divya. When one understands the transcendental nature of appearance of Krishna and his activity, there's no need for him taking birth again in the material world. So this is the whole process of Krishna's consciousness, helping us to come out of this material existence. Having understood that, I fervently surrender myself to this process of Krishna consciousness and is practicing it up to today. In the nutshell, this is what I have to say. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Is this time finished?
Yeah, he spent 9 minutes, 7 seconds.
Okay. All right. So, any feedback from the fellow students? Yes, as we said, you say something positive, you point out an area of correction or improvement, and then again something positive.
Okay, maybe I'll start. I'm always
Okay.
starting. Thank you very much, His Grace Srivas, Rasavan Prabhu, for your wonderful presentation. Actually, devotees are always very unique. The devotees are always very unique. And and that's why it's the beauty of presentation of Bhagavatam, because everyone has a unique gift in how he approaches the subject matter. So in the beginning of your presentation, you picked out the mode of Kadamamuni in the text number 16, where it was emphasizing how everyone should work under the Supreme Lord, and how we work under the Supreme Lord is to take the mode of Isavasya, which is very key point. I think you mentioned there. And as you progress, I was monitoring your time. You spent 4 minutes, 13 seconds in explaining that first verse, which was a little bit more than, and I think that's what affected your closing, because you spent about 4 minutes there. And then when you go to the second verse, you spent 5 minutes. So you were not able to go into the third verse. So that's one observation I see, that you spend so much time in emphasizing the points that you got in the first 2 verses. So it did not give you enough time to go into the third verse. The other thing I see is that in the application, I think I expected more, better than this, because based on the explanation that we've had from His Grace Srivas Vanacari, I was expecting that based on the explanation given, and since you're also doing personal application, I was expecting you to give us more about, throughout the presentation, you were talking about that is what I was expecting from your personal application expression. And then, like I said, the other part is that at the end, you couldn't cover the third verse because you had already took based on the time given. Time management was okay, you couldn't finish the time, but it could be more better than that. And then in presentations, the richness of presentation of philosophy is to give references. You gave one reference from the Bhagavad Gita, which is good. You gave the Isavasya reference, which is good, but I was expecting, when you discuss subject matters, there are some key verses in the Bhagavad Gita that actually directly, which beautify these points. I was expecting to hear. So, but in all, like I said, every devotee has its uniqueness in presentation. So, and then your presentations, it gave me the opportunity to think wider beyond my own line of thinking or how I would have done this. Thank you for giving that opportunity to learn.
Thank you. Madhavan Prabhu.
Hey Krishna Maharaj. So I first of all like to thank Rasavan Prabhu for the lecture, the presentation. He also enumerated his objectives starting from the Savasya principle, everything belonging to Krishna, and that one should just utilize those things that are necessary for sustenance. So you dwell well on those ones. We also enumerated how we live our life. We should live our life away from being a stereotype type of life. You know, that somebody who is pursuing spiritual life should live a very modest life and shouldn't engage too much in materialistic way of life. And he also explained how we should live our life so that we can attain this spiritual life or devotional life. So yeah, right, but his presentation is just like he plays over the point and finally came back to a conclusion. I think he has tried, but I don't think his presentation is better than the first that is Palita Prabhu, but he has also tried. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Next person. Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Yes. There's
Hare
a study.
Yeah.
Yes. On the 17th, the point that I picked that he spoke about, that I think is essential, is the necessity of life. The necessity of life means concern the marriage life. Prabhupada said it shouldn't be like stereotype. It shouldn't be like stereotype, like repeating. You have to regret the way you regret your married life, the way you have to regret your marriage affairs and those things. I think about eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. All those things, I think Papa gave us a point that it shouldn't be stereotype, like to be repeating. We have to regret it. That's why I always said we should regret our life and those things. So I think we mentioned those points. And the personal application and those things, I think it's okay for me. That is my understanding of this. That I show what I want to say. Thank you. It's okay for me. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So, Rasavan Prabhu, thank you very much for your short presentation. You were able to identify the points of the text in text 16. You came up with the point of the Ishavasham principle. In text 17, you came up with the stereotype life. And in text 18, you came up with the point of the time factor, the effect of time factor on the living entity. So you are able to identify those points. That is very wonderful. I think I'm also expecting the students also go into the purport. This exercise it requires a detailed study of the purport. Besides the verse, you also have to go through the purport to see what Prabhupada is bringing up. Prabhupada is churning these verses, is churning them and bringing the nectar for us to drink. Sometimes the verses are a bit difficult to digest. So what the Prabhupada does is he takes the verse, he churns it, he brings the butter or the amrita to the top for us to just enjoy. So when we study a verse, the verse gives us an idea, gives us a general idea. But when you study the purport is like a digested form of the verse. So you can always find more points in the purport than in the verse, because Srila Prabhupada would go in different directions. He would view it from different angles. Actually, that is the purpose of Shastric study. We should view the verse from several points of understanding. And Prabhupada encourages us to study these Srimad Bhagavatam verses in that way, that when you take a particular verse, you can have different angles of perception of that verse. And so most of the times you see that in his purports, he will bring up so many subject matters in that verse. Sometimes certain things you say, you don't even find them in the verse. Prabhupada will bring them up in the purport. So you nicely identified those principles from the 3 verses. That is very nice. But I would have expected you to also get some points from the purports. And then I would have you made reference to yourself, but you didn't elaborate. Say, for instance, the Ishavasam principle. How do you apply it? You see, so you should come out very strongly that with this principle, I would only accept things that are designated as my quota. That is what the principle is saying. One should accept what is his quota, and one should not accept other things that do not belong to him. So you have to come out strongly that following this principle, I will only accept things that are meant or that are set aside as my quota, and I will not bother myself about other things that are not part of my quota. So it means you have personalized the principle. In the same way, you talked about stereotype lives. People are just engaging in relationships. People are satisfied relationships. In fact, in this world, people are just struggling to maintain these relationships by means of, different activities. And this is what Prabhupada described as stereotype. Everybody is doing it. The human beings are doing it. The angels are doing it. The animals are doing it. The insects are doing it. Everyone is doing it, So therefore, if you want to transcend this world, transcend the modes of nature, transcend material entanglement, then you must not follow this stereotype life. And so as a personal application, you will say, I am becoming very determined. I am planning. I want to step back and just concentrate on Krishna consciousness. I want to minimize this stereotype life and just concentrate on Krishna consciousness. So you personalize the point. In the same way, the time factor is consuming everyone. It says the rising of the sun and the setting diminishes everyone's life, except for those who are engaged in Krishna consciousness. So you could end your personal application here by saying, since time is affecting everyone, since time is reducing everyone's lifespan, since time is consuming everyone, and which is a fact, then for me, I am going to utilize time only for Krishna consciousness. I am going to maximize my utilization of time in Krishna consciousness so that I am not cheated by time. So in this way, you personalized the principles. So otherwise, you did a good job. You have come out with the points. You have put them in some perspective as far as personal applications are concerned, but you did not emphasize, you did not conclude very strongly how you would personally apply them in your life. So thank you very much for the presentation. As Sanika Prabhu said, what do you call it? It's a learning process. It's a process. Is a progressive path. So day by day, we are learning how to do it better. So it's just to help so that we can understand how to conduct these exercises. And that will reflect on our individual lectures, and it also reflect on our individual presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll go to the next person we have. All right. Yeah, you want to say something? Please go ahead.
Well, I thank you very much. And I thank all the devotees for their positive criticism. And since we are in a learning process, all are well noted, and we hope to improve. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Actually, that's good. Normally, at the end, the student has to also react to the comments from the various students. So yeah. So we will say we thank the students for their comments, and we take it in good faith. Then we will use these points to advance on the path. So that is that. So I think we now go to the third person. Our time is limited. He will use 10 minutes to present, and then we use a few more minutes to make the comments, and we close the class. So I think Madhuvan Prabhu is the third person.
Hare Krishna. Nama Om Vishnu Pada Pramsa. Sarva Society Divine Grace Sri Bhakti Dasa Swami Papa Maharaj Ki. Nama Acharya Dasa Ki. Hare Krishna. So, without wasting so much time, first of all, thank you for giving this very wonderful opportunity to give a presentation like this. Because we have limited time, my first my first consideration is, what is the objective of Karavamuni? You know, he was given an assignment by Lord Brahma that he should procreate. The intention of Lord Brahma is to populate the whole universe. So he has commissioned him. So having commissioned him, going straight to my own personal application, what I learned was that ordinarily, when we are given a job or a commission, we go straight to the job. Probably we don't even want to waste time. But in case of ceremony, it was different. So having accepted this assignment, then he went to penance. And the scripture even told us that it took him 10,000 years that he went to penance. And then he practiced devotional service. So personally, this is, I consider it very important because ordinarily one wouldn't have thought like that. So, and his purpose was to get himself to Brahma realization. And from the text of the chapter, it says to us that once you attain this level of Brahma, then nothing is impossible for you to achieve. So I saw that as a very wise decision from Karamuni. Now, going to text 19, which translates, my dear Lord, you alone create the universe, O personality of God, designed to create this universe. You created them, maintain them, again, wind them up by your own energy, which are under the control of your second energy, called Yogamaya, just as a spider creates a cobweb by its own energy and again winds it up. So, Karamuni was very smart. So he started by glorifying the Supreme Lord. You know? And just like the text explained, the Supreme Lord himself is also sentient. That is, he can hear prayer and can also fulfill the desires of devotees. So, he sort of established a personal relationship with him, even though he wasn't seeing him. So he started by glorifying the Supreme Lord, you know. And, you know, from the purpose, I think the prayer suggests that God is speaking and can hear the prayer and fulfill the desire of devotees. Therefore, the Lord is Sakchit Ananda Vigraha, that is the form of bliss, knowledge, and eternity. So it did not stop there. He went ahead on text 20. My dear Lord, although it is not your desire, you nevertheless manifest this creation of gross and subtle elements just for our sensual satisfaction. Let your costless mercy be upon us, for you have appeared before us in your eternal form, adorned with the splendid wreath of thought. Okay, by this step, you know, he also made us understand that even though we're in this material world, but it was not even your own desire, because Scripture explains that because of our material desire, we are originally in the spiritual world, but because of this material desire, you created this material world. Just like sometimes children, they also like to play, you know, which, for instance, let me take an example. Sometimes if we are not careful enough, our children can just take our car key and attempt to drive our car. So when we notice this type of tendency, what do? We buy a small car for the child, we give the car, the car to the child, and to our amazement, we see that the child also enjoyed the same pleasure, driving a real car and driving also while driving a toy car. So, but an advanced soul, to be able to reason above this mundane childish activity. So this test is able to explain this basic point, for us. So in the purpose, I think the last statement. Therefore, the last instruction of Bhagavad is this: give up all your manufactured engagement in the material world and just surrender unto me. I shall protect you from all sinful reaction. So then going to text 21, which says, I continuously offer my respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet, of which it is worthy to take shelter, because you shower all benedictions on the insignificant, to give all living entities detachment from fruitive activities by realizing you. You have expanded this material world by your own energy. The statement, which is still continuing verifying the supreme love. And there's a particular statement I want us to focus on, which says, I think that's the second statement, which says, you shower all benedictions on the insignificant. It's a kind of humility, when you are approaching the supreme lord, someone has to be very, very humble. If somebody who wants something from maybe your father or higher authority, you must be humble enough. So he was very technical. And even in the purpose, it was explained that in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord affirms, Papa Yante. So anyone who desires to be a successful enjoyer in this material world is awarded that benediction by the Lord. Anyone who wants to be liberated from the entanglement of this material world is given liberation by the Lord. And anyone who desires to constantly engage in service in full Christian consciousness is awarded the benediction by the Lord. So, Kadamuni went through this technical process, approaching the Supreme Lord, and at the end of the day, we saw that he succeeded, because when the Lord appeared to him, he was smiling, and that's a sign of approval. He was very pleased with him. So, I think this text, what I learned, or what my realization is the process by which we can approach the Lord if we have a mission to fulfill. Not just that we approach our mission and maybe when we have problems, then we start turning back to the Lord. No, but we first of all have to engage in penance and devotional practice. We perfect it. Then on that platform, nothing shall be impossible for us to achieve. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. You spend 9 minutes, 25 seconds.
Okay. Any comments about his presentation?
Okay, I'll start again. Thank you very much, Madhuman Prabhu, for your nice presentation. And I think that one thing I've seen is that practically all of the devotees have a general understanding of the philosophy, which is very good. It's a unique one. And that is what you have expressed in your presentation, that the understanding of the context of the points is there. But I think that having proper understanding is not enough, because the purpose of this exercise is to learn how to present it. In the first verse that you treated, one thing that was very unique that Prabhupada emphasized based on the statement of Kadamamuni was the very point, the conception of impersonalism. And I didn't see you reference that at all in your presentation of that verse. And that is actually what Prabhupada picked out in that. And Prabhupada gave an analogy of this example of the spider. It's also significant, which I was expecting to hear. Hare Krishna. Someone say something?
No, we are listening to you.
Okay, so I was expecting you to reference the Prabhupada focus on and the analogy he gave. And then having picked up the application in your presentation, I'm not sure whether I had application. What I saw or what I had from the presentation of the first to the third verse is general understanding. I didn't see that I made that mistake and you pointed out. So I was expecting you to show me more how to apply application. So you were focusing on the understanding of what Kadamamuni did, but how it relates to your life and how you exemplify it. You're not mentioning that. But in general, at the end, time management was okay. I was expecting some references from the scripture. Prabhupada did very nicely. He quoted, Prabhupada always paraphrase the verses of Bhagavad Gita to support. You quoted in the second verse, which is verse 20, Ye Yataman Prabhupada, that Prabhupada quoted. But I was expecting your own reference to support that, because there are other verses in the Bhagavad Gita and even in Bhagavatam that support that. So I was expecting you to bring in to support Prabhupada's reference. So in the area of, these are the 3 points I think that needs to be worked on. One is that you were not picking out too strongly Prabhupada's focus points in the test. The second is that personal application didn't come out. General understanding was there. And I was expecting more references to back up what to back up your understanding. So that was the flavor I was looking at. And in summary, I think I want to give kudos that I can confidently say that you understand the subject matter, and that is beautiful. So how to apply and present it, I think is what needs to be on. But in general, it was a nice presentation. And it gives me courage that at least devotees understand the philosophy. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. So next person who wants to comment? Anyone can comment. If Chitra Ketu Prabhu is ready, he can comment. Rasavan is ready, he can comment. Anyone can comment.
Yeah. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
So that is what Madhavan Prabhu has done is very nicely, very beautiful. He has a general understanding about the test. And I was also expecting in Prabhupada's analogy that he gave about the spider, I was expecting how, since he understands it, how we can apply it, we can break it down and apply it to our devotional service. Yes. And also about the impersonalism. Srila Prabhupada always talks about impersonalism, which is very much of deceiving most religious other bodies or other people pursuing spiritual life. They talk about how the Lord is formless and all of that. So even when we recite the Prabhupada's pranam, the second line speaks about how his spiritual master is instructing him to preach to the West, which is full of voidism and impersonalism also. So the impersonalism should have been somewhere. I was expecting him to emphasize more, bring it more down, how we can stay away, or we can dodge, we can give up this impersonalism mentality in our practical life, and to take shelter of the personality of God, the Lord having a personal form and all of that. I was expecting much from there. So that is my little thing. Generally, he has done very well and nicely, keeping up time and all of that. It's a good work done. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Any other comment? Other students?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
I actually appraise him a lot for his presentation, but like I was expecting him to take advantage of myself and then Sarika Prabhu's first and second presentation and the corrections we had and he heard. Like in my case, where Maharaj cited many examples that I should have said this about my personal self. I was expecting much that from him, but he generalized as if he was talking to somebody else. He was making somebody else to take advantage of the point instead of focusing on himself, how he has taken advantage or he will take advantage. In a nutshell, I see that he has made a very good presentation. This is the only aspect. And then like Sarika Prabhu is saying, references. We need to reference a lot to Srila Prabhupada. And how Maharaj, you also corrected me. We need to go deeper into the purport and then bring out how the nectar that Prabhupada has churned for us from there. So in a nutshell, he has done well.
Thank you. Tamara Krishna Prabhu, you want to make some contribution?
Tamara Prabhu, if you don't have any comment, okay. Good. We are not hearing you. You are muted. You are muted.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna. I can hear you now.
Yes. What I can say is he has done well, as my senior devotee said. But a place like the reason this word was created on the test 19. This word was created. It has the purpose of creating this word. I want to, like, I'm expecting more about that. I couldn't hear anything about that. So we have to highlight more about that. But all the same, he has done well, as my senior devotee said. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So Madhuban Prabhu, I think you have very beautiful verses, and Prabhupada has given a lot of points in his purports, and if you had studied them meticulously, you would have had many more points to present, for sure. Although you did your best by demonstrating your understanding of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, but there are many more points that you have brought up in your presentation, and then personalize them in your life. And that would have made a beautiful presentation. As others have already pointed out, issue of impersonalism, Prabhupada smashed it in the 19th verse, where he said that he gave the example or the analogy of the spider. That the spider is an individual living entity, and by his energy creates the cobweb and plays on it, and then it ends up by winding up. So the same way the Supreme Personality of Godhead manifests the material creation for a purpose, and then winds it up when the time is up. So it is simply emphasizing the personal form of the Lord. So as a devotee, how do you apply that in your life? It means that you will not give any chance to the teachings of impersonalism in your life. It reinforces your understanding and conviction that the Lord is a transcendental personality, is a sentient being. There are other points in the other verses, like understanding the purpose of creation. What is the purpose of creation? The Lord provided this material creation for the living entities to learn, for the living entities to experience. And then they, by going through the material world, they will take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. They will become very detached from the spiritual activities, and they will take full shelter of the Lord. So there are many, many points that you could bring up, and then you personalize them. You bring it into your own life. How are you going to apply these points so that your life can become perfect? You can achieve the same goal as Kandaramuni has achieved. So there is much more you could have brought up from the purports and then personalize them, and that would have been a very beautiful presentation. Otherwise, it is wonderful for the attempt you've made, and we hope in the future you can improve on these areas that have been brought up. So thank you very much for the presentation. If you have some, if there is any reaction, if there is any comments you want to make, you can make quickly. We have already gone 15 minutes above the time, so that we can bring the class to a close. Then tomorrow we continue. So do you have something to say in this regard? What is your reaction to the exercise so far?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
My reaction, I first of all want to thank you for giving me the opportunity. And also, because of the time factor, I was just able to give a general perception. And then my main realization is that whatever the goal I want to do, first of all, I have to engage in penance and then devotional service before I now get myself involved in whatever the objective. Because on that platform, whatever, I haven't reached that platform. That's why I mentioned the platform Brahman, spiritual platforms, transcendental platform. Then anything we execute on that platform, then we become very successful. So thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, so tomorrow I don't know whether these two devotees will be present or not, Kamalaksha Prabhu and Yadunath Prabhu. They are going to handle the mood and mission. So it's going to be different from what we've done today. We're going to be picking points that are in line with Prabhupada's mood and mission. And then the next is preaching application. So when the mood and mission is finished, then we have Jyoti Swarup, we have Tamal Krishna Prabhu, and Chitraketu Putra Prabhu. They'll be presenting points on preaching application in relationship to preaching application. When we talk of preaching application, actually is the easiest. We always say, because you are preaching, you are highlighting the point, you are educating people about the importance of these points you have gathered. In the case of personal application, you must bring it into your life. So it's specific. In the case of mood and mission, you must relate it to Prabhupada's mood and mission. If you make a statement, how does it reflect Prabhupada's mood and mission? But in the case of preaching application, you are just explaining these points from a preaching point. You are just educating people on these points. You are sharing on these points. So it is more flexible. Preaching application is more flexible than mood and mission and personal application, because they are specific. So anyway, let's see how tomorrow's presentations unfold. And so in the absence of anything else, we say thank you for your participation, and we are looking forward for the rest of it tomorrow.
Thank you very much, His Grace Srivas Vanacari Prabhu, for your wonderful coordination. I want to personally express appreciation for your mood and approach to teaching the Bhakti Vaibhava. It is very unique in its own way. Thank you very much. And it is said that you cannot teach what you don't know. So you're exhibiting by your own practice that you know what you are delivering, and then it's impacting on all of us. We thank you very much. In the same way, I want to appreciate very strongly the designers of the Bhakti Vaibhava modules. They've done a very amazing work in the way they have put together these modules. It's an amazing, what can I explain what they must have gone through to be able to bring out this. So I'm using the opportunity to appreciate them for bringing out the modules in the way they have brought it. It gives us the opportunity to have an in-depth understanding of the philosophy, which is what Prabhupada desires. So I appreciate and I also want to appreciate our spiritual master for giving us opportunity to come together like this and learn in an environment of devotional service. We thank all the participants, those who have taken time to join. When we did the Bhakti Sastri, I think in my set, we were almost 17 or 18. We did it, but then when it comes to Bhakti Vaibhava, everybody stepped back. So it shows that, and that is what happens naturally in education. When we go to the primary school, kindergarten, primary school, we have 1,000 students. By the time you get to secondary school, they may be probably 600, 550. And then when you get to the university, maybe about 300 or so will be there. When you get to masters and postgraduate, it starts decreasing like that. So I'm using the opportunity to analyze that we should also stay put, keep on pushing, and then try to get to the zenith of the teaching, because ultimately the goal is to be able to get the zenith, which is to have a darshan of the Supreme Personality of God as we have learned today. Thank you very much, everyone. And on this note, I will request that all of us unmute. Let us loudly chant a powerful Hare Krishna Mama to appreciate His grace, Srivas Vanacari.
Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Krishna, Hare
Krishna
Hare,
Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare
Hare
Hare. Chakrapatarubyas, Chakripas, Vaishnava Brinda ki jai. Nitai Gora Premanandi.